I never thought the creak of an old guest room door could sound like temptation. When my wife left for her business retreat, some executive conference in Aspen with her marketing team, I expected the house to fall into a kind of quiet routine. Me, my coffee, and my unfinished manuscript, maybe a podcast murmuring in the background. But then she asked me to do her a favor. "Just keep an eye on Liam for the weekend," she said, casual, like he was a stray cat and not her 22-year-old. Nephew, who had just moved back from college and was, apparently, too broke to afford his own place yet. We weren't strangers. Liam had spent summers with us when he was younger, all limbs and oversized hoodies, following me around like a shadow. But this time was different. This time, I wasn't the cool uncle by marriage he remembered. And Liam, well, Liam had grown into something that made me hesitate in doorways. It started with little things, the way he dropped his duffel bag by the couch and ran a hand through his shaggy hair, grinning like he knew something I didn't. Or how he laughed when he caught me staring just a second too long at his collarbone, at the way his t-shirt clung after a shower. The worst part was that he didn't even seem to notice what he was doing to me, or maybe he did. He claimed the guest room, right next to my office, where the walls were too thin and the space between us too charged. That night, he sprawled across, the couch in shorts, game controller in hand, asking if I wanted to join him like this was some college dorm and not my house, not my life. I told myself it was harmless. A weekend, a favor, nothing more. But that night, lying in bed with the hallway light casting shadows under my door, I heard his laughter again, low, unfiltered, careless. It sank into my skin like warmth I hadn't known I missed. And I wondered, what did it say about me that I didn't want this weekend to end? Liam always had this way of making everything feel easy. When he was younger, it was in the way he followed me into the garage, curious about my tools or whatever project I was tinkering with. Now, it was in how he moved through the house like he belonged barefoot and humming to himself, a Spotify playlist drifting behind him like a breeze. "Still drink your coffee black and bitter like your soul?" he asked the next morning, leaning against the kitchen counter with a smirk, shirtless, a towel thrown casually around his neck. I tried not to stare at the droplets of water trailing down his chest. "Still ask dumb questions before noon?" I shot back, but I was smiling. He grinned, that same old grin that used to come after he beat me at Mario Kart or pranked me with a plastic spider on my desk. Only now it lingered longer, his eyes not leaving mine. It made my chest feel too tight. "For morning." "Touché, Uncle Nick." He said it teasingly, dragging out the title like it didn't quite fit anymore. It didn't. I wasn't old enough to be his uncle, not really, and certainly not in the way he looked at me now. Open, curious, a little too bold. We settled into a rhythm by late afternoon. I worked in the office while he sprawled on the living room floor with his laptop and some half-finished screenplay. At one point, I wandered out to grab water and found him asleep, arm draped over his face, a notebook open beside him with scribbled notes, and a list titled, "Best Dialogue Lines." That don't sound corny. I couldn't help but smile. That evening, the power flickered just after we finished dinner. Liam's idea of a simple pasta dish that turned out surprisingly good. A rumble of thunder followed a moment later. "Oh no," he said dramatically, turning off the stove. "Don't tell me your 1970s breaker box can't handle a little weather." "You said you wanted a rustic experience," I replied. "Consider it character building." He laughed again, warm, full. But when the rain started for real, pounding against the roof and windows, things changed. The lights cut out. The house dipped into shadows. And just like that, we were stranded in candlelight. "I guess I'm bunking with you?" he asked casually. But there was a flicker of something behind it. A challenge? A question? "Couch is free," I offered quickly, but my voice cracked at the end, too soft to be convincing. "Come on," he grinned, nudging my shoulder. "What if I get scared of the dark? You're 22, not 12. but you make me feel 12 again, he said. Then, more softly, in a good way. I didn't know what to say to that. I looked at him, and for a second he didn't look away. His eyes lingered, curious, warm, unreadable. He held that look a moment too long. Later, when I passed by the living room to head to bed, I found him curled on the couch under a blanket, scrolling through his phone. A single candle still flickered on the table. As I turned to leave, he said quietly, "Thanks for letting me stay here. It's weirdly nice being with you." That hit me harder than it should have. I stood there in the dim light, watching the soft curve of his cheek as he smiled down at his phone, and I felt something inside me shift. Like the floor of my life was tilting, slowly, and I didn't know yet whether I should try to steady myself or just fall. By the second night, the storm had gone from charming to inconvenient. The power still hadn't come back on, and now the Wi-Fi was out too. Liam declared it a total apocalypse while poking at his dead phone and sighing dramatically. "I ever think we're just two guys, alone in a house, slowly descending into madness," he said, sitting cross-legged on the floor, candlelight casting flickering shadows across his face. "Feels like the setup to a horror movie, or a really intense indie film. More like a bad sitcom," I muttered, trying to hide the way I was watching him. How his hair curled at the nape of his neck, how his t-shirt clung to the slight dampness on his skin. We were supposed to drive into town that afternoon, pick up some groceries, maybe get a generator, but my truck had other ideas. I found it dead in the driveway, battery drained. Probably from the security lights being tripped all night by the wind. Liam came out barefoot, pulling on a hoodie, his brows raised. "Dead?" "Dead," I confirmed, slamming the hood with more frustration than necessary. "Damn," he said, hands in his pockets. "Guess we're really stuck together now." He grinned, and something about the way he said together made my stomach tighten. That night, the cold rolled in. No heat, no lights, no truck. And now the rain was picking up. Again. I found Liam dragging his blanket into the hallway, a candle in one hand. "What are you doing?" "Your office is the warmest room," he said, squinting at me. "I was going to camp out there. You've got all the books, the carpet, the beanbag. You'll kill your back on that beanbag," he shrugged. "Better than turning into a popsicle on that damn couch." I hesitated. My bedroom was warmest of all. It still had thick curtains, rugs, an old quilt my mother made years ago. But saying that out loud felt loaded. Still, I said it. "You could stay in my room, just for tonight." His eyebrows rose, but not in surprise, more like curiosity. "Yeah? You sure?" "No, absolutely not." "Yeah," I said anyway. "It's stupid for you to freeze when the bed's big enough." He followed me down the hall, quiet now, less performative. I gave him a spare pair of sweats and a shirt, something clean and loose. He changed in the bathroom while I stood by the window, staring out into the dark like I'd find answers there. When he came out, he looked soft, comfortable. Hair damp from another quick rinse, the too large shirt sliding slightly off one shoulder. "You okay with this?" I asked, already slipping under the covers, trying to sound casual. "Yeah, I trust you," he said, climbing in beside me. He lay on his back, close enough that I could feel the warmth of his body, the occasional shift of the mattress as he settled in. "Unless you snore, then I might have to smother you with a pillow." "I don't snore." "Good." A long silence stretched between us. The room dimmed with only the occasional flash of lightning outside the curtains. I turned slightly, just enough to see him, eyes open, staring at the ceiling. "Can't sleep?" I whispered. He shook his head. "Feels weird. Not bad. Just, I don't know." I wanted to ask what felt weird, but I didn't, because I was afraid I already knew. Another silence. Then, "You ever think about what it'd be like if things were different?" he asked softly, like the words were slipping out, without his permission. I turned to face him fully. "Different how?" "I don't know. If we met somewhere else. If I wasn't your nephew, well, not really, but kind of. If we were just two people who happened to be here. Right now." His voice was quiet, tentative. Not a joke, not teasing. My heart started pounding. "You're not really my nephew," I said. "You know that." "I know. But sometimes it feels like we're playing parts other people gave us. Like, I'm supposed to be the nephew, and you're supposed to be the responsible married guy. But what if we weren't?" His words hit me like a punch to the chest. I turned back onto my back, staring at the ceiling now too. I could feel the heat radiating from his side of the bed. Could feel my own body tense with want and restraint. "I don't know if I'm allowed to think about that," I said. He was quiet for a moment. Then slowly, he shifted closer. Just an inch, then another. His hand brushed mine between the sheets. Just barely, but he didn't pull back. I didn't either. "Do you ever feel like you're trying not to want something too much?" he whispered. My breath caught. My throat felt tight. "All the time," I said. He didn't say anything after that. Just let the silence stretch, heavy and warm and full of all the things we weren't saying. His fingers curled just slightly, against mine, not quite holding, but not letting go either. And I lay there, caught between fear and something dangerously close to hope. I didn't sleep much that night. Every time I started to drift, I'd become too aware of Liam's hand, still resting inches from mine beneath the blanket. Not quite touching anymore, but the memory of that soft brush lingered like a phantom, igniting. Something in me I'd spent a long time trying to bury. I stared at the ceiling for hours, listening to the rhythm of his breathing, wondering what the hell I was doing. What I was risking. What it might mean. Just before dawn, the storm finally let up. I could hear the wind dying, the steady tap of rain becoming soft drizzles against the glass. When I glanced at Liam, I found him already looking at me. Eyes open, soft with sleep. And something else. "You didn't sleep either?" I asked. He gave a small shake of his head. "Not really." His voice was rough, a whisper more than anything. He sounded like how I felt, fragile, on edge. "I kept thinking," he said after a long pause, "about what I said last night, about pretending to be people we're not. I didn't mean to make it weird." "It wasn't weird," I said too quickly. I've just been thinking too." "Yeah?" I nodded. My throat was dry, my chest tight. "I think I've been thinking about it for a long time," I admitted, voice low. "Longer than I want to admit." Liam shifted, turning onto his side to face me. His expression softened, like he already knew where this was going but wasn't going to push. "I keep telling myself it doesn't mean anything," I said. "That it's just the way you are, friendly, affectionate. You treat everyone like they matter, and you're good at making people feel seen." His brow furrowed. "And you think I don't see you?" "No, that's just it. I think you do." I breathed out. "And I don't know what to do with that." The silence stretched again, but this time it wasn't cold. It wasn't avoidance. It was full of something deeper. His eyes were still locked on mine, patient and careful, like he was letting me take the lead. "I've been lonely," I said, finally voicing the thing I hadn't let myself admit. "Even before you came, even before all of this, it's not about being married or not married. It's about feeling like I've been pretending to want the life I chose." Liam's fingers twitched between us again, then moved, slow and deliberate, until they found mine. "Do you remember last summer?" he said, his voice barely above a murmur. When we went kayaking and you flipped my boat on purpose? I laughed softly. Yeah, you were so mad. I wasn't mad, he said with a half smile. I remember looking up at you, soaking wet and thinking, this feels like something, like maybe it wasn't supposed to be just fun. I swallowed hard. Why didn't you say anything? Because you're you, and I'm me. And I didn't know if I was imagining it, or if it was one of those things you carry quietly because saying it out loud ruins everything. I blinked, trying to steady the flutter in my chest. But you weren't imagining it. His hand tightened around mine, just slightly. No? I shook my head. No. He moved a little closer then, and I felt the warmth of him again, stronger this time, less hesitant. His knee brushed mine under the covers and neither of us pulled away. I thought I could just let it pass, I said. That it was just a crush, some misplaced curiosity. But the more time we spent together, the worse it got. You made me feel like I could breathe again. Like maybe I didn't have to keep living on autopilot. Liam exhaled, like he'd been holding his breath. God, I thought I was crazy, he whispered. I kept trying to convince myself you weren't flirting, that you just didn't notice. How close you always stood, or how you'd look at me when you thought I wasn't paying attention. My face flushed. I noticed. I just didn't think I was allowed to look longer. He reached up, tentatively, brushing his fingers against my cheek. It was barely a touch, but it lit something electric in me. I'm scared, I admitted, not even trying to sound brave anymore. Me too, he said. We lay there, breath mingling, hearts racing, the silence between us now thick with the weight of everything we'd said. I looked at him then, really looked, and saw all the things he'd never said, but always showed. The way he stayed up talking to me when I couldn't sleep. The way he made me laugh even when I didn't want to. The way he noticed the little things. How I liked my coffee. How I always rubbed the back of my neck when I was overwhelmed. You don't have to do anything you're not ready for, he said softly, his fingers still resting on my jaw. I want to, I replied, my voice almost shaking. I just don't want to lose you if this gets complicated. Then let's not make it complicated, he said. Let's just start here. And then, finally, I leaned in. Slowly, cautiously, like if I moved too fast, the whole thing might vanish. Our lips met in the softest kiss, tentative and tender, all breath and trembling. He kissed me back with that same careful energy, like we were both still asking permission with every second. Like we were testing the shape of something long imagined but never spoken aloud. When we pulled back, I kept my forehead resting against his, grounding myself in the reality of it. You okay? He asked, his voice laced with something close to wonder. I nodded, eyes still closed. Better than okay. He smiled, and I felt it before I saw it. You're shaking, he said gently. Because I'm terrified, I whispered. But for the first time in a long time, I don't want to run from it. Liam's arms came around me then, pulling me in, not just to hold, but to anchor. We lay there like that, tangled up in each other, with our breaths finally sinking and our hearts beating out a rhythm that felt, somehow, like home. Outside, the rain had stopped, and for the first time in months, maybe years, I felt like I had too. We didn't say much at first. We just lay there, wrapped up in the quiet, in each other. His hand rested against my chest like it belonged there, like it had always known the rhythm of my heartbeat. And I let myself hold him back. Really hold. Him. Like I finally understood what my body had been aching for this whole time. Eventually, the light from the window shifted, casting a pale warmth across the sheets. It was morning now, and yet, somehow, it still felt like the middle of something, not the end. Liam was the one who spoke first, his voice muffled against my shoulder. "So, is this the part where we panic?" I huffed a laugh, the tension easing in my chest. "Only if you want to." He looked up at me, eyes clearer than I'd ever seen them, even with the sleep still clinging to the corners. "No," he said. "I don't want to panic. I want to do this right. I want to be someone you don't have to hide from anymore." My throat tightened again, but this time from something softer. "You already are," I said. "I just needed to stop hiding from myself first." He smiled at that, and then his fingers found mine again, looping between them like it was the easiest thing in the world. "I've got to admit," he said, teasing, "I was half convinced. You were just into my muscles." I rolled my eyes. "I'm not just into your muscles. It's also the ridiculous way you butter toast and pretend it's a culinary art." "Hey, some people appreciate flair." "Oh, I appreciate it," I said, leaning in to nudge his nose with mine. "It's stupidly endearing." He grinned, and it wasn't careful anymore. It was all in, open, unguarded. It was Liam, the version of him I'd been falling for without fully realizing it. For a while, we just talked. About small things at first. How long we'd been holding back. How it felt to finally admit it. Then deeper. He asked me if I'd always known I could feel this way about a guy. I told him no. That I didn't even have the language for it until recently. That it wasn't about gender. It was him. He didn't try to fix it or label it. He just nodded and said, "Same." And that was enough. Later, as we moved around the kitchen, making coffee, stealing glances, bumping into each other on purpose, I felt the shift in everything. Not in a dramatic way, but in the quiet closeness. In how he didn't flinch when I touched his wrist. In how he laughed easier. How he leaned against the counter and watched me like he'd never really looked at me before, and maybe I was doing the same. "This is going to be complicated, isn't it?" I asked eventually, as we stood in front of the open fridge pretending to care what we'd make for breakfast. Liam's eyes met mine. "Yeah, probably." There was no pretending that reality wouldn't hit hard later. My marriage, the questions, the mess we'd have to face once this little cocoon we were in broke. Open. But when he stepped closer, closing the door, and wrapped his arms around my waist, the worry dulled, replaced by something steadier, hopeful. "But I'd rather have complicated with you," he said, "than simple with anyone else." I rested my forehead against his. "Then we'll figure it out, one step at a time." His lips brushed mine, light and lingering, like a promise, and for once I believed it. 3 days later, the guest room felt quieter than usual. I stood in the doorway, leaning against the frame, watching Liam fold his clothes into a bag that still had the faint scent of his cologne. Mint and cedar, and something warm I couldn't name. He didn't know I'd been standing there a while, just watching. Taking him in like I was still convincing myself this wasn't some dream I'd wake up from. "Need help?" I asked softly. Liam looked up, a smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Depends. You gonna fold or just stand there looking broody?" "I'm very good at brooding," I said, stepping inside. "Years of practice," he chuckled, tossing a rolled-up shirt into the bag and stretching his arms overhead. I tried not to stare, but it was no use. He caught me. "Again." "Dude," he said, laughing now, "you're terrible at being subtle." "Never claimed to be," I said, reaching out to lightly tug on his wrist, pulling him toward me. His body met mine with a familiarity that still felt brand new. "I don't want you to go," I admitted, voice quieter now against his shoulder. "It's stupid. I know you'll be back, and it's only for a week, but—" "It's not stupid," he murmured. "I don't want to go, either. But I've got to take care of things back home. Pack up my apartment, tell my folks." He hesitated. "Figure out what it means to stay." "Stay?" I echoed, my chest tightening. He nodded. Here, with you. I don't want this to be a thing that just happened while your wife was away. I looked at him then, really looked. He was nervous, Liam, with all his confidence and playfulness, suddenly vulnerable again. You're not a fling, I said. You never were. He nodded once, swallowing. Then I'm coming back. For real. There was a long pause before either of us spoke again. Do you remember that stupid glow-in-the-dark frog you used to put in your bag before sleepovers? I asked suddenly, a grin tugging at my lips. Liam blinked, then laughed. God, yeah. Why? I reached into the nightstand drawer beside my bed and pulled it out. Still faded, still ridiculous, but intact. I kept it, I said, handing it to him. Don't ask me why. Maybe because it reminded me of you. He stared at it for a second, then his mouth twisted into that familiar crooked smile. Okay, that's insanely sweet and also slightly creepy. You love it, I teased. I do, he admitted, brushing his thumb over the worn plastic. Then he slipped it carefully into the front pocket of his bag. And now it's coming back with me, like a promise. I nodded. A glowing amphibian. Promise. Very us. As we stood there, arms looped lazily around each other, the hum of something bigger settled into the room. Not heavy, not overwhelming. Just real. This wasn't over. It wasn't even close to being finished, but it was beginning. When we walked to the front porch later, his ride idling in the driveway, Liam turned to me one last time before stepping down the stairs. I'll text you the second I land, he said, and probably every hour after that, I laughed. Promise? He reached out, fingers sliding between mine, and gave my hand a soft, deliberate squeeze. Promise. And then he kissed me, quick, but full of meaning, like something we'd keep between us, even miles apart. As he disappeared down the street, I stayed standing there barefoot on the porch, the morning sun catching the edge of the roof, warming my skin. My phone buzzed, a message from Liam, just one word. Soon. And somehow, that was enough.